Hello everyone, my name is Kit Cabello of hardlensmedia, and today we have a very special sit-down interview with one of the Democratic primary candidates who's running for governor of Illinois, Tio Hardiman. He's joined us before at a previous debate that we covered, and he was also on our radio show that can be heard every Saturday from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Central Standard Time on Q4 Radio. Tio Hardiman, thank you so much for joining hardlensmedia.
Yeah, glad to be here.
So essentially, you are in a race to get the Democratic nomination for governor of Illinois. However, you have two name brand candidates who are also running, Kennedy and Pritzker. They have name recognition, connection to PACs, corporate donors, and have media coverage. What's going to separate your campaign in regards to them, and why should the people of Illinois choose you over, let's say, more of established Democrats?
Well, first and foremost, I'm the only candidate in the race that ran for governor before. In 2014, Hardiman secured close to 30% of the state vote, and I won 30 counties downstate. So when it comes to name recognition, my name is throughout the state already. I want to make that clear. Mm-hmm. Now, some of these billionaires and these big-time money candidates, they're drowning out the voices of the working class and poor people. What makes the Hardiman and Avery campaign different is because our campaign is powered by the people. So we plan to put together one of the strongest ground teams in the history of Illinois to make sure that we win the primary.
Mm-hmm. And it's quite clear that a lot of people don't really understand that some of these areas in Illinois have been abandoned by the Democratic Party. So the fact that you actually earned a lot of votes, especially down south, really states a lot. But seeing as how Illinois is such a diverse state and some districts have been abandoned by the Illinois Democratic Party, what has been your outreach towards those regions, and what will your administration do to regain their trust and support in a Democratic governor?
Well, first and foremost, I selected my running mate, Patricia Avery. She's from Central Illinois, Champaign-Urbana, and she has a lot of relationships with people downstate in the southernmost part of Illinois as well. And I was mindful because we need to make sure that the entire state is covered. So I just got finished wrapping up a Central Illinois tour. I visited Decatur, Peoria, Champaign-Urbana, and some other little smaller place like Bartonsville down there in the central Illinois. And then next week I plan to go on a southern Illinois tour to go back and visit East St. Louis again. So I've been in East St. Louis a couple of times in Belleville, and that's the St. Clair County area. So I plan to go back and visit the people and talk one-on-one to the people. One of my strengths would be motivating people and good communication skills, because I got a chance to shake hands with over 300,000 people when I ran in 2014. And that paid off for me on a higher level because I didn't have a whole lot of money. We had about close to $30,000 or $40,000 to kind of work with. But to me, I'm the only candidate that will run for governor and not worry about the money. Sincerely, because I know enough people to win the primary. Is just getting the people to vote for me. Okay, that's the most important thing. Don't get me wrong, we need money. I'm not going to put a cap on it. Whatever we can raise, let's raise it. If we can raise a few $1 million, the more, the better, in other words. But at the same time, I haven't missed a beat. I've attended most of all the debates. I've traveled the state already. I have banners, materials. We just ordered our petitions. We have to collect around 10,000 signatures, and I have people lined up. I have about 500 or 600 people lined up to take one petition each and get it filled out for me, and they're volunteering. So, and that's all over the state. We're going to get names from people all over the state.
Now, when people think of Illinois, they always think of either Chicago and to some other extent Springfield. But when you've traveled to these other areas in Illinois, what have you noticed about what the people in those respective districts are struggling with? What are their struggles, and what concerns you what concerns do you have if nothing's helped to alleviate those districts?
Well, when I've traveled downstate and basically central Illinois and Chicago and Lake County areas, the northern part of Illinois, this is what's happening is that people are struggling with an increase in property taxes. That's what a lot of people talk to me about. That's why I'm planning on, once I become governor, I plan to put a freeze on property tax increases, okay? Number one, they're struggling with like job creation. Job creation is like number one priority for the Hardiman and Avery administration because, like I said previously, I plan to use some of the money out of the business transaction tax and the progressive tax to fund capital construction projects throughout central and southern Illinois to the tune of about $50 million to make sure that people are working. We need to build streets, to infrastructure. We need to help people become part of the state of Illinois once again and feel like they're part of Illinois. That's very important. So I plan to reach the hearts, pierce the hearts of the people, and turn the Hardiman and Avery campaign into a historical campaign. That's my strategy as well.
All right, and this is a follow-up. In regard to Illinois, we are suffering from a budgetary crisis, and people are losing trust in Springfield. If you win the nomination and race for governor, what will be your administration's actions to getting the Illinois and state Senate and House to pass an effective budget, and what trials are you concerned in regards to actually getting their support?
Well, I have a history in becoming a peacemaker and a broker of peace. So my thing is to work across the aisles and work with the Republicans, work with all the Democrats. I'm a Democrat, running for governor here, and that's my expertise level, bringing people together, building bridges. So I don't think I'm going to have a big problem. I believe that I would have to meet with Mike Madigan and make sure that Mike Madigan understands the Hardiman and Avery vision for Illinois, and hopefully he can become a part of that. I know Madigan has been around, but see, this tug of war between the two titans, Madigan and Rauner, this needs to stop, because every year, Chicago public school students, and keep in mind, we have to think about the entire state and all the school districts, but Chicago, the kids are worried about, are they going to start school on time or not? We have to bring an end to this type of psychological warfare. If I was a kid growing up in Chicago right now, and I see that everybody, the so-called leaders, are saying I may not be able to start school on time, that would kind of like bring down my morale a little bit. So these people need to think about the kids first and put all their little jive time politics to the side. So the Hardiman and Avery campaign, by being powered by the people, we plan to put the people first, and the kids are really number one in our book.
All right. Now, in one of the debates that hardlensmedia covered, you were a few of your candidates as well were talking about a progressive income tax to help Illinois. So what will be your plans for a progressive income tax, and what will be your process in getting the Senate and House to support it?
Well, it's time. It's overdue. I've talked to a lot of members of the General Assembly already, and everybody's geared up to support the progressive income tax. It's just that you got people like Governor Rauner who stood in the way. So there needs to be a constitutional amendment in order to make the progressive income tax a reality in Illinois. But it's been proven to bring in $2 billion of new revenue for the state. So just think about this for a minute. Under a Hardiman and Avery campaign administration, we imposed the business transaction tax and the progressive income tax. That would bring in $5 billion a year of new revenue. So the 4-year Hardiman-Avery administration, that's $20 billion of new revenue that we can actually use to secure, to make sure the schools are funded properly statewide, to offset some of the pension crisis, not the entire pension crisis, but some of it. I hear these stories from elderly people that are worried about their pensions. You have some people that receive a pension, but they're like over 70 years old, and they still have to work another job because they're scared that they're going to lose parts of their pension and parts of their medical coverage. Like, I'm pushing Medicaid for everybody. Everybody should be covered. We have 900,000 people in Illinois without health insurance. So we have to do something to help the poor and working class people out right now. So my run for governor also is what you call, it's much needed. The people need a Tio Hardiman and a Patricia Avery, because we come from the working class people's pool, the pool of people from the working class and poor population.
Now, you spoke of a constitutional amendment. How will that constitutional amendment get passed, and why do we need a constitutional amendment, especially in regards for a progressive income tax?
Well, the main reason you need it, because right now within the Constitution, the tax is the way it is. So you have to change the Constitution and make us the taxes taxing people at the percentage they're taxing, and that's in the Constitution. So we need a progressive income tax that it's going to take a constitutional amendment.
Especially
for Illinois, right? Because and what you have to do is that you have to get support from everybody all across the aisles, like I said, and then we make it a reality. It can be done. It's going to take a couple of years though to make that a reality. There's no sense in deceiving the people. Just like the minimum wage increase, I support $15 an hour all the way. But I'm also mindful enough to know that small businesses may get hurt a lot because they may not have the money. So we're going to increase the $15 minimum wage, but also plan to provide small businesses with incentives to make sure that they don't go out of business because they can't afford to pay it all the way. So I'll make sure that employees do receive $15, so you can bet your money on that.
Now, let's look at another state, for example.
Yeah.
Colorado, they've legalized cannabis, and that state has a budgetary surplus, something that Illinois desperately needs to rebuild not only their infrastructure, but to fund every single aspect within the state of Illinois. And right now, there is Senate Bill 316 and House Bill 2353, which is calling for cannabis to be legal in Illinois. Now, if it is passed, and if you are governor, will you support these bills? And will you also decriminalize cannabis? And what will your administration also do to make sure cannabis entrepreneurs and citizens who are buyers are not harassed by Jeff Sessions of the Trump administration?
Well, the thing about cannabis, I support legalizing recreational amounts of cannabis, okay? But let's be honest. cannabis, marijuana in particular, is a gateway drug to higher level drug usage. It's been proven in addiction, surveys that most people start out smoking marijuana, then they graduate to cocaine or heroin. We have to be careful, but as a governor, I'm a leader. So I'm not going to sit up here and play with the people. I don't want to see young people smoking marijuana all over the state of Illinois and then end up becoming drug addicts. That's what I want to definitely make sure we prevent that. But at the same time, I'm not so much sold to legalizing it to the point where I have to take a look at it and tweak those particular bills to make sure it's just for small levels of recreational usage, okay? And I'm definitely against locking people up because they've been caught with small levels of cannabis in their possession. I'm definitely against that. As a matter of fact, part of my policy is to convert some of those minimum security penitentiaries into institutions of higher learning to make sure that young men and women, when they leave jail, in our effort to reduce the recidivism rate in Illinois, that when they leave, they can go right into a place of employment because they will have, at minimum, a bachelor's degree or an associate's degree.
Now, a lot of research into cannabis, doctors as well as other scientists have confirmed that it does help deal with people who are dealing with opioid addiction, or if they're battling cancer, cannabis has been used as an aspect to basically heal and allow them to deal with chemotherapy a lot better. So in regards to a follow-up, what is your plan of regulations and protections for cannabis should it be legal in Illinois?
Well, cannabis, once again, small levels of cannabis, recreational use, should be legal. But when you go into higher levels and volumes and quantities, we cannot play with that, okay? Now, if that be the case, then they need to turn it into an overall business where people can. I would love to see, just hypothetically speaking now, these young men that are out here selling cannabis on the street corners out here, what's in it for them? Can they open up a dispensary? Can they become employed? Can they own their own business where they can sell it legally then? So it's a whole lot of conversation that needs to take place around it. I'm not saying that I would back that, completely, but at the same time, it would be kind of bad in Illinois to see other people making profits off of selling the cannabis, but the brothers and sisters on the street levels in Chicago, East St. Louis, Decatur, they're not making nothing off of it, they're steady going to jail. We need to do something about the cannabis issue, but at the same time, I've seen the ugly face of addiction. I understand the opiate crisis in America, not just Illinois. Cocaine addiction, so people need to be careful when you talk about the uses of drugs. I'm not going to play games with the American people and the people in Illinois. We need to think out of the box and when it comes down to bringing in more revenue, and it doesn't necessarily have to come through legalizing, cannabis. It doesn't have to come through that way. I probably don't need candidate that's going to say that because I'm not trying to just get votes and step on people just to step on them to say something popular. I would like to be honest with the people that are going to support my campaign.
Okay. So in regards to, especially with cannabis, the war on drugs has really targeted African American, Latino communities, poor communities, and it's basically allowed the increase of the militarization of our police forces. So what is your administration's plan for police reform throughout the entire state of Illinois?
Well, I'm the only candidate that stood up against police brutality and excessive force here in Chicago, especially when the Laquan McDonald tape was released. I plan to, when I talked about it earlier about appointing a czar to oversee all those types of issues, police brutality, police accountability, violence reduction. As the governor of Illinois, I plan to reduce homicides in Chicago by 50% within 2 years of my administration. I know how to do it. I plan to appoint the right people in my administration to get the job done as well. But also, as a governor, I plan to hit the streets every now and then. This will be different from any other governor. I plan to hit the streets of Inglewood on the south side of Chicago and the Austin community to organize African American men in particular to address the issues in their own community. And I would provide some resources to make sure that 10 to 20,000 African American men and women stand up in their communities and begin to address this epidemic of violence.
Now, you did speak about turning some minimum security prisons into education centers.
Right.
So, essentially, what will be your policy towards other more maximum security prisons? What will be your policy towards reforming the prison system here in our state of Illinois?
Well, the good thing about Tio Hardiman for governor, I have an expertise in violence prevention, an expertise in working with ex-offenders, and an expertise in working all over the place. I visited a lot of the penitentiaries in Illinois already. I was part of the committee to shut down the TAMS Supermax prison. I visited Stateville. I've been down to Menard, Pontiac. I visited those prisons. Right now, a lot of guys are being locked up for 23 hours a day in some of the maximum security penitentiaries, and some other prisons they're locked down for 18 hours a day. My thing is we have to find a way that's beneficial for inmates that have an out date. for inmates that will return back to society. So as they begin to wind down during their time that they have to serve, that they have access to programs that can best help them become more suitable when they're released. Because if you lock a guy down or a female for 23 hours a day, when they're released, they haven't learned anything. But don't get me wrong, there's another side of the coin here. See, correctional officers, I support correctional officers all the way because we're not down there with them. You got some inmates that are incorrigible in some cases, you do. You have some people that are really committed to a life of crime. And some people have to be locked up because they have predatory behaviors. So you don't want your kids locked up around people that are going to try to take advantage of them. So we have to be careful when it comes down to incarcerating and make sure that we have certain levels, which they already have that in the Illinois Department of Corrections, but we have roughly around 52,000 inmates statewide in these prisons. The recidivism rate is a little bit over 52, 53%. So the number might be, every year might go up or down or whatever the case may be. But we have to find a way to work with the inmates to help better them as far as their quality of life when they're released from prison. Because too many people are being placed on medications while they're locked up. And this has been proven. Tom Dodd even talked about it in Cook County Jail, how they're medicating a lot of prisoners. It's hard to sit in a cell for 23 hours a day. But if you commit a crime, you murder somebody, you rape somebody, you rob somebody, you have to do your time. So I don't want to be seen as a governor that's soft on crime. When I talked about converting minimum security penitentiaries into institutions of higher learning, that's for people with nonviolent backgrounds. That's for people that are locked up for drug sales, people that are locked up for, like I say, nonviolent classifications.
All right, and in regards to our infrastructure, because if people have nowhere to go, and especially in some low-income areas, schools are shut down, there's no work, and our entire system is in a state of disrepair. So what is your plan for Illinois in regards to rebuilding roads, bridges, and other projects that could help local communities thrive again across the state?
Well, that's part of the Hardiman and Avery 2020 plan, which represents a perfect vision for the people of Illinois. And that's what I talked about, and I don't want to just keep going back to it, but the progressive tax, House Bill 453, the business transaction tax, I would use those funds to actually rebuild infrastructures, to actually help pave new roads out here, and also help jumpstart a lot of small businesses throughout Illinois, because the small businesses are suffering just as well. See, you have to travel the state to see what I'm talking about, basically, because when you go down to Belleville and East St. Louis, when you go down to Jacksonville, Illinois, you go to Galesburg, people doing the best they can to survive, but you can see clearly that people are hurting in Illinois. So as the governor, I plan to focus strictly on the poor, working class, and some middle class people, and some of the wealthy people as well that understand. See, a lot of the billionaires that are running, they could service the state a little bit better if they would just support programs and support, infrastructure projects in certain areas themselves. I mean, it's not their job to do it, but instead of them running for governor, if they really want to help, you're a billionaire. For example, one of the candidates, I'll say his name, J.B. Pritzker. He deposited $1 million in a black-owned bank on the south side of Chicago. He's trying to pacify the black community, in my opinion. Bruce Rauner did the same thing when he ran for governor. The reality is J.B. Pritzker is a billionaire. Why won't he put $1 billion in a black-owned bank if he really wanted to help the people? See, this is about just pacifying the people, and that's why you hear me talk about the sellout pastors of Chicago, because what happened, they'll work with these billionaires and get some money for themselves and a few people in their inner circle, but the masses of people will remain poor, struggling every day out here. But these people ride around in their Rolls Royces, they ride around in their nice cars, and I don't have a problem with people living nice, but don't say you represent the people, but you're only representing yourself. And that happens time and time again. And I can back up what I'm saying, so I'm a different type of candidate, not trying to be politically correct here, but I'm a thought leader. I'm intellectual and all that kind of good stuff there. But I'm also a layman's type of governor. I understand things on layman's terms. And I love the people of Illinois, everybody. I plan to make tuition free for college students when I become the governor as well, especially if they have a particular GPA. We plan to work on a process to make college tuition free.
Now, there is also, I'm glad that you talked about how money in politics has been affecting this campaign and previous campaigns as well. So across the board, Republicans, Independents, Democrats, all these voters agree that money in politics is crippling our democracy. They believe that they're not getting any proper representation at the state level, at the federal level, and it should no longer be part of our electoral process. What is your campaign's stance on corporate donations? And how have you seen money in politics, that you mentioned earlier, but why don't you mention it again one more time, affect our democracy?
Well, money in politics is hurting our democracy. That's how we end up getting Donald Trump as our president. And it's hurting us to a level where it keeps drowning out the poor people's voices, because a billionaire can put a lot of TV commercials out there in the universe, and he can package himself any way he would like to because he has the money to do it. And it's hurting us because corporate people continues to get tax incentives. You know, these big corporations, they're not paying their fair share of taxes. That's why I support the progressive tax. None of the other candidates are really talking about House Bill 453 to impose a business transaction tax, Chicago Board of Trade, Chicago Board of Options, okay? All this is very important. No one wants to talk about it, so that's because they have these corporate relationships, and they don't want to hurt those relationships. We have to stop thinking that way, because as governor, you want the entire state to come up. See, by the time the Hardiman Navy campaign, we have a 4-year administration, I would like to see a 30% reduction in the number of homeless people in Illinois. From 1.7 million people right now, I'd like to put a big dent by 30 to 40% in that number. I would like to see corporate people can help in a lot of other ways instead of just getting business incentives from the state. We have to begin to work with these corporations where they can help take a bigger, higher level look at what's going on in Illinois and how they can help in other areas with mental health institutions, how they can help donate to different causes in Illinois to help children with autism, donate to domestic violence shelters. You know, see, we got to start looking beyond just state funds. We got billionaires out here and corporations that can sponsor and open up 15 or 30 mental health institutions across Illinois. They can fund those type of programs themselves. The billionaires can do it. Women rights, that's important, because right now there was a survey that came out where women are still not being paid the same level of money that men are being paid. We have to uplift our women just like the men out here. So there's a lot of different ways that you can deal with corporate, you know, like people and all these lobbyists and stuff. And I also plan to videotape all my meetings with special interest groups. So when people wonder what I talked about, go get volume number 1 or 2, seriously.
Well, that's a great note to end it on. So real quick, for all our viewers and subscribers who are watching this, where can they find more about your campaign, and where can they find you on social media?
Yeah, my website is hardlemanforillinois.org, and that's HARDIMANFOR Illinois.org. And on social media, Tio Hardiman, my name, Tio, T-I-O, Hardiman, HARDIMAN.
All right, well, Tio Hardiman, thank you so much for joining Hard Lens Media, and to all our viewers and subscribers, peace, everyone.
You're watching Hard Lens Media.